Hi,
Hello,
Chris.
hiya.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Can you see me properly?
Yeah, yeah. Can
Okay.
you see me properly?
Yeah, all great.
Great. Well, welcome. I was just doing a brief introduction before you request to join. So
All right.
Friday afternoon, a little bit
Yeah,
cloudy here in London, and yeah, we're just here to have a cup of coffee and have a cup of tea and talk about our first artist in residence of Curated Crowd. So welcome, Christian.
thank
Give
you. Thank you so much. I'm in my new studio, so I've just moved in. There is what you can't see is the mess that's everywhere, but you can see I've set it all up so you can see a nice thing.
Exactly. I think beneath all the perfection, there's always mess and a lot of chaos going on.
Exactly. A typical artist mentality. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, so Christian, why don't you do a quick intro about yourself for those, who are on the line with us who don't know you already?
Sure, no problem. My name is Christian Azolan. I'm a digital artist. Many years ago, when I was at university, I studied fashion design and I did fashion illustration. And then when I finished there, I went into a little bit into the industry. I did illustration. I've done some work for McQueen and some other big brands in the fashion industry. And then I left that all behind and went into the corporate world for where I was spent the last 9 years doing marketing and brand management. And then it really hit me when the pandemic started. It was a case of I really wanted to start and have my own business. So I decided, what do I want to do? What career do I want? I thought, let me go back to my roots, art, illustration, photography, and those kinds of things. So I decided at the time to start digital art because my partner bought me a stylus for one Christmas, and I just have it. I had it sitting in the drawer. And then when the pandemic hit, I was sitting at home. And I thought, oh, I'll start doing some digital drawings, and I'll start putting it out there and putting it on social and getting a reaction. And then it went from there, and here I am.
Okay, so when was that?
So that was March last year, just at the beginning of the pandemic. Yeah, so
Right,
I've actually been running my business coming up to 12 months now. So
right. Okay, but I mean, even though your business has only been around for 12 months, but the artist in training has been going on for quite some time. So,
absolutely.
when we spoke, when we, met each other for the first time, I was on Zoom because of pandemic. We couldn't meet in.
Exactly. We've never actually physically met.
Um, when you introduce yourself, you mentioned you are a digital artist. So help me understand better. What does it mean?
Being a digital artist means, if I just break it down to what was happening at the time, I couldn't go, because of the pandemic, everything was closed. So I couldn't go to an art shop and buy traditional paints, materials, canvases, all the things that you have as a traditional artist.
Yeah.
And the only thing I had at the time was my computer, my tablet, and my digital pen. So I'm still drawing on a digital platform using my computer, but the only difference is my tools are digital tools. They're
Mm.
not they're not physical tools. They're not real paint. But to be a digital artist, you still have to know how to paint and the techniques of painting between light and shade and things like that. Because when you use I use a software called Photoshop, as many people know. I also use it on my tablet called Procreate, which is specifically for artists and digital artists. But a lot of people think when you're a digital artist, the computer does the work for you, and it really doesn't. You have to learn. You still need to understand how to blend, how to shade, how to do certain things into the tool, because you're not gonna just start using it and suddenly print a beautiful picture if you don't know the skills of basic drawing, illustration, style, color, technique, textures, and things like that. That's what comes across when I use a digital tool. And my end product, as I send it to the printers and they print it out into a poster or an actual fine art print, because I use specialist papers and materials, that's when the whole process is digital. So what you eventually end up seeing is a digital end result.
Right. Okay. Because what I found fascinating is, you started the whole creative process digitally, but what end up with your end consumers is actually physical. It's
Yeah,
physical.
it's a physical product. Yeah.
I mean, for us, also for curated crowd customers, when they first came across us, at least for the past 12 months, it's that digital interaction, be this form of IGTV, or they see the beautiful products online. But I think what really excites people is that whole journey, right? The
Yeah,
discovery
exactly.
and having this piece of clothes in your hand and tried it on.
Exactly.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Exactly.
I
And a lot
also,
of people, I just
yeah.
want to say, a lot of people actually own digital art, but they don't think of it as digital art. So some of my friends I speak to, and they go, "Oh, you do digital art? I don't own any digital art." And I'll say, "Oh, do you own any famous Picasso paintings or any Van Goghs or Michelangelos in your house?" And they go, "Oh yeah, I've got the prints." That's a
Yeah.
digital version of the real thing, because you don't own the real Picasso, you don't own the real Van Gogh, but you've got a digital version of that print. So it's a
Yeah.
form of having it in your house, but you've got a digital element of that because it's been reproduction and reprinted for you to put in your home. Because not many of us will own the real Michelangelo or the Mona Lisa, but we have digital versions of art in our house, but we just don't make that link because we think of the original masterpiece, but we don't own the original masterpiece. We have a reproduction.
Absolutely. Yeah, and also I think this is probably is a long sort of education process, right? Because when we were, at least when I was brought up, a piece of art, you need to look at them like this because that's something you're longing for. It's high, it's unattainable sometimes, and it's for the privilege.
Absolutely.
And when you and I started the conversation, I said, why, one of the missions you launched your own business is also making art accessible for
Yeah,
everyone.
absolutely.
So how do you think in the past 12 months you have seen the general public start to shift their perception about art? As you were explaining, actually everyone can own a piece of art, and how has that helped the people, to
Yeah.
change the way how they think about things, their and the general well-being?
Absolutely. I think the last 12 months has really allowed people, because they've been sitting at home, looking at their four walls, and instead of what they would usually spend their money on, which is going out, having dinner, going to tennis, going to watch the tennis, going to sports events, actually going to physical galleries, what they've done is they've looked at their spaces around them and thought, how can I make it better? How can I make it work for me? And what things can I put up that will allow me to feel something and have beautiful things on my wall, and yeah, so they've been really thinking about their surroundings and their well-being, because when you're in a confined space, the first thing you want to do is customize it. You start painting the walls, you change the floors, you get new curtains, but a lot of people forget their walls and they think, actually, I'll just buy a nice piece of art. And the difference, I try to make it, there's two things which I have to balance, like you mentioned, which is the accessibility of the art. I don't want art to be super expensive, but I don't want also 1,000 prints of one thing. So what I do is I put it at a price point that people can find it affordable, but at the same time knowing, because all my stuff is limited edition, there's not, you don't have one of 1,000, you have one of 100 or one of 50 or one of 125. So you still have something unique, you still have something special that you can put up on your wall and say, not a lot of people have this. There's only 50 of these, or there's only 25 of these. But the materials and what I've used and how they've received it, it's all been thought about. So the paper that I use, the ink that I use, all these things have been really considered, because having a fashion background and having a fashion training, all those things are really important. The process of how something is made, or the materials that you use, is just as important as the final result.
Right. Okay. Do you have any pieces in your studio that you can share with us?
Yes, I was trying to find everything, because everything is in boxes right now on the floor, which you can't see. But I've got two pieces. I've got one which is the intimacy print, which I did with my friend Ruth Melbourne, who actually makes these jewelry pieces, and we just wanted to work together to create a piece of art which was really about having an art in your special place, in your boudoir. It's not something art that you're going to show. It's a nude piece, so you wanted somewhere intimate, something quite nice. And what I've done is I've also created a specific color just for the Curated Crowd people, which is the baby blue. So that's exclusive. No one's going to get that. It's not even on my own website. It's only on Curated Crowd, and people can get the baby blue version of that, which is really exciting. And the other piece that I've got is a slightly bigger piece, which is the golden flock piece. I have to move back a little bit, which you can see here.
Yeah, let's talk about that one, because I was totally blown away by that piece. But it's the composition and also the color and also the meaning behind it, right? I think when we are locked, in our home, and one thing we are longing for is freedom. It's the ability to do whatever we want.
Exactly. Well, it started because the process for this piece and the whole bird series, which I've got in Curated Crowd, is really about the idea of freedom and fantasy outside of your home, because we're all stuck at home and we're all looking outside through our windows, And what we can see are birds flying and that feeling of freedom and knowing that's what we want because we're confined. And it's quite interesting because we've become birds in our own cages at home, you know? And so the idea was, this golden flock of, the idea was it's about being together. So it's a flock of starlings that really work as one, because the only way we could ever get through this pandemic was actually together. We wasn't a solo venture. The other thing was the golden sun represents time, but also a better day of things to come in the future. So really, the sun represents time naturally, because we do things based on the sun. You know, our morning, afternoon, and evenings are all based on where the sun is. So our future was really lying about us working together as one, but one day having the freedom to really be together and go out there and do the things that we normally do. So that's where that came from in terms of, you know, that golden flock of people working together. So for me, that was really, really important to really, that's how I was feeling during the pandemic. That's how I felt. And I'm sure a lot of people felt the same way, which is they're just sitting there at home thinking, how do I get through this? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. There was a question from the audience. Probably get asked many times to say, where do you draw your inspiration from?
Oh gosh, this is a question that I think even if you ask even an artist or a fashion designer or anybody and you say, where do you get inspiration from? It's such a cop-out answer to say from everywhere and everything and things that are around me. But I think whenever I have exactly the same process, and my inspiration of thought is exactly the same when I was at fashion school, exactly the same, which is I think about an idea in terms of, I think, oh, the idea of birds. And then I think, oh, actually, I might watch a film. So then I watch a film. And for this one, I watched The Birds by Alfred Hitchcock specifically. And you're not going to copy it. But what you're doing is you're getting inspiration from there, because birds suddenly became scary. And the situation in the pandemic suddenly became scary. So you pull those elements. Then I might start reading some DK books on birds, the flock of birds, how they work. I might watch some videos. I might go online and read about photographers who photograph flocks of birds and murmurations and things like that. So you're really looking at things that you can pull from. You're not going to use everything. I might look at feathers or flow patterns or specific colors that I like, or colors that might be trending, and things that I might not be used before in the past that I might be pulling into. So I'm really looking at things that I can pull from and put on almost like a vision board and put it in a folder, and I just collect it. Then when I start doing the series, I start pulling things out that I like. I think, oh, that particular gold, that particular pink, that particular color. And you start editing and narrowing down. Yeah. So the bird series, for example, has, gosh, I think about 25 pieces, but I actually designed around 32 around there. And what happens is, like anything, is you edit down, because you're creating a series, like creating a little capsule collection. You edit down. And I think, oh, you know what? These aren't going to work. Or this is quite similar to this particular piece. And I start editing out. But I guess I would say inspiration for me comes from other artists and other cultural things that happen. So the pandemic was an inspiration. The film that I watched was an inspiration. The colors and textures that I like is all an inspiration. And you just pull that all together. So different series or different collections that I pull together have completely different bits of inspiration. So even music comes down to it. And I think about songs in my head, or songs that I've never heard of, or new artists, or sometimes I might watch a fashion show online or a particular coverage. It literally comes from everywhere, but I'm trying to explain that it's considered. And as you put everything into the pot, you then start taking things out that you want. You don't use everything.
Yeah, I think, it's, I had the same feeling, because the other day I was taking a walk in Regent's Park, and I just put on my earpod. I was listening to music, and suddenly you realize, maybe because we all have 6 senses. Well, some people say we have 6 senses. Sometimes we have 5 senses. The touch, the smell, the taste, the hearing, the viewing. And I think because during the COVID, our eyes have been constantly flooded with content and moving images and still images. Suddenly you become tired, or you become very numb to the visual. And then when I put on my music on and I was walking in the park, I started to see things that I never noticed before. I said, oh, this is so beautiful. I started taking pictures. And then you walk past by the spring flowers, and then I suddenly start to smell them much more. So I don't know, was it because that particular day the wind was blowing to different direction? But
Yeah.
you know, when one sense is being overly used, and then the other senses start to open. And to your point, you know, you get inspiration from everywhere. I guess because you're an artist, you're naturally very open. You absorbed all the signals and all the things, and then you're trying to put them together and then express them in your own way. So here's a question. Let's say, you know, move fast forward 6 months. Do you think you will go back to the traditional sense of artist? And then you will go to the paint shop to buy canvas and buy paint again and start painting on paper or canvas again?
It's quite interesting because the reason I've moved into a studio is because I'm actually going to do my next series coming out in October is actually going to be traditional art in terms of that's how it will start. But what I was thinking was actually it might be nice to photograph them and sell also digital versions of that work. So I think there'll always be a digital side to what I do because that's how I feel quite comfortable. And I think what the digital does is it gives accessibility to people to have something. So for example, yeah, I might, when I do the painting or the technique that I'm doing at the moment is painting on photography, which is quite interesting as a mixed media. I will only have one of those pieces of work, but maybe I might release 30 to 40 prints where people can buy and it's more accessible because that one piece of art that I'll have that's physical, I'll have, you know, to get the money back and make the amount that I can to actually live on, it's got to be, I've got to sell it at a good price for it to make sense because there are hours that go into it. But a digital representation of that work that's limited, I think gives people that accessibility to say, maybe I can't afford the original, but actually, you know, I can afford a print and I can afford a smaller print maybe. And it's still unique because I'm not just printing for the sake of printing and having hundreds and thousands. It's still exclusive in a way. Yeah. So I think that's where I'll end up. But because of, for example, I'm painting on photography. Photography is a digital art form. Yeah. Well, the photograph is a digital thing. So once I print it, it becomes physical. Then I paint on it. I think that takes it to another level. So I think for me, the experimentation around that is what's really important and really interesting for me to keep that digital element.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think, you know, one of the mission at Curated Crowd is that, you know, we want to be the new forces of trying new things, you know, and, you know, when we discuss, you know, the idea of having you to be one of our artists in residence, I especially like the idea that it's this mix of, you know, digital and the physical, and just like everything else that's happening around us, you know, no one really knows what the future holds for us, and then the only way to find out is constantly trying and break boundaries and then challenging, you know, our traditional perception. And I still remember for myself, you know, there was a very beautiful David Hockney exhibition back in, I don't know, was it 5 years ago at an art? And, you know, you first saw, you know, those beautiful paintings that, you know, he did in the early parts of his career. And then in the end, going to the last room, he started with everything was digital drawing. Right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Everything an iPad. And I thought, really? Why would he, you know, give up his pen and canvas and then oil painting, start to do some digital? But now looking back, he was actually one of those pioneers to say, you
that's
know,
right. Yeah.
And then I'm venturing into new boundaries. So yeah,
I actually remember going to that series at the Royal Academy and looking at all his digital stuff. And he did these series. I think he lives in the south of France, I believe, at the moment. And he did like all these like a summer extravaganza of all these outside all outside landscapes that he did. And I thought it was so interesting because yes, his technique is different, but what you can definitely see in his original work and his digital work is that it's still David Hockney. I think that still comes across.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now here's another question for you, right? Last year, obviously all the art fair could not happen physically. Art Basel and the Freeze all started to be online. And do you think when normality returns, they will start to go back to physical forms, or do you think there will be a completely new sort of format? It's always going to be online and offline coexist.
I think they have to work together. I think what people have had to do, the successful ones over the last 12 months, is balance the idea of traditionally going to an art gallery, having a space, inviting an exhibition, you know, in London, for example, and going to see that is going to be very different to, well, let's say I can't get to London. Let's say I live in Los Angeles, or I live in Hong Kong, or I live in Sydney, or wherever I may live. can I get the digital version of that, which is to show me the digital version that I can access to and get. So I think we have to find the balance between the two. Like you said, over the last 12 months, galleries have not been open, exhibitions haven't been open, pop-up events, art fairs. I've built my business in a space where those things are not normal for me. So I think if I did go into the retail space, I think I'd be very considerate, because now I'm not only just thinking about, oh, should I have my stuff in an art gallery? Maybe I could have it in a hotel lobby. Maybe I could have it in a pop-up shop. Maybe I could have it. So you have to start thinking about where the audience is and where the different people are, and not just always serving the art crowd, not always serving the people who go traditionally to a gallery to buy art. I want to serve people who want to buy stuff on Instagram, want to buy stuff on TikTok, wants to buy stuff on, on all these different platforms, because what those do is they break down the barriers, they break down the dividing lines of where you're physically located. And I think that's going to be really important.
Absolutely. I mean, even the traditional big players, in the art scene, I mean, they start to do IGTV, and then, Instagram become their main place to showcase their work.
Absolutely.
We are opening our new pop-up in April, so we'll be glad to have some of your pieces on the wall, and then providing you a physical space apart from the digital platform.
Exactly. And I think that link between fashion and buying something that you're going to put on is just as important as buying something and putting it on your wall. It's about your surroundings, because I think it goes from clothes to the furniture to the paint to the wallpaper to the things that you have in your space that really set your whole aesthetic of who you are as a person. And I always tell people, it doesn't matter whether you buy my art or other people's art. Buy art that you like, that you're going to love in 10, 15 years time, and you're going to have it in your wall and give it over to somebody. Buy things that you like and you love. Don't buy things because there's a sale or because you really need it, or that's not the approach to it. You buy it because you like it. So you might be out thinking, oh, I might get that top. Then you might say, oh, that piece of art is nice. That goes with my top. It goes with my aesthetic. It goes with my furniture or my paint on my walls or whatever. That's how you should really think about art. And I think people who are interested in fashion, I think they have an eye, so they know what's good. They know what works. They're very picky. They like a certain thing and a certain style. And I think that's good, because it shows your individuality through that. And I think art, fashion, music, all the cultural things all kind of jam into one, making you that person who you are.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. It's all about the curation, right? Through the things around you, you define who you are. And also, I think now a lot of people use, Instagram as a way how they express themselves. Like when we look at a new designer, or when we, want to meet, let's say, a new intern, whoever wants to work, say, what's the front page? So instantaneously, it's almost like that's a mood board, and then that's the way how she or he represent who he is, and then you kind of get into his brain and say, okay, this is the kind of person he is just because of the way how he's expressing himself.
Absolutely. That's that visual aesthetic. We've become so visual over the last 12 months, more so than normal, I would say, because we've had to go into those devices to experience the outside world, because we couldn't go physically out into the outside world. So I think visually we've been like you mentioned, overstimulated to the point now that we understand these platforms or these areas, and we're not afraid of them. I think it's the same way of thinking, oh, can I buy art online? Can I buy it through somebody on Instagram? Those barriers are gone. People are buying online more than anywhere right now.
No, I agree, but that's also why Clubhouse, all of a sudden becomes so popular, because we're so over-flooded by visual. Now we want to understand the person through listening, through hearing. So
absolutely.
Next boundary,
Yeah, I mean, I only started listening to podcasts and going on Clubhouse this week, and I started listening to a podcast. My first podcast was last week. The first time ever I've listened to a podcast.
Oh, wow.
Because as an artist, I'm so visual. Suddenly to have you say that audio sensory take over was really interesting, a new experience for me, because even though in my mind I'm still creating the visuals, because what you do is when someone's talking, I imagine what they look like, where they are, what they're doing, how they're talking, things like that. But the only thing you've got to connect with is that audio, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, great. So we have a question from the audience that was a bit here. They're saying, okay, if you can collaborate with the artist who has already passed away, who would that person be and why?
Oh gosh, there's two. I already know who they are. There's probably two or three. The first one would be Salvador Dali, because he was just so out there in terms of surrealism. I just absolutely love his work. The second one is Gustav Klimt, and I'm actually experimenting with some things right now in terms of gold and texture and that laying of the beautiful and that kind of decorative element of Klimt, kind of stuff that he does. I really love that. And so there would be him. And the other one is an almost like an ink artist, which is Audrey Beardsley, which is a beautiful artist that does, he did a lot of like posters and is very much of the Art Nouveau movement. So
Yeah.
those three definitely I would, but I'm also obsessed with the Art Deco, like Art Deco kind of movement and Art Nouveau. I just absolutely love it because I think there's a sensuality, there's a sensitivity that comes with the work. I absolutely love that. So definitely be Dali, Klimt, and Beardsley for sure.
Right. And funny enough, all those three artists really peaked their career in the 1920s, right? And at the high
Absolutely.
level. So, I mean, from my standpoint, I think we're gonna see a revival of everything that's, you know, that used to be in the golden 20s, and then yeah, I can't wait for the lockdown to be over.
Yeah. I think the idea of minimalism and those things are kind of put to the side at the moment because we are now starting to think about the good times. And I was speaking to a friend the other day, actually, fun enough, and she said to me, you know, once I come out of this lockdown, I just want to do something really crazy. And I just thought, wow, that's so interesting because I'm thinking the same thing. Like, what can I do that's really crazy that I haven't done? And I think it's just that eagerness or that feeling to get out there. And exactly.
1920s, that was after the First World War, right? When everyone's in this happy mood and they rebuild something and the artists express themselves. That's why everything was acceptable.
Absolutely.
Limit, of course. All right. Okay. Well, my last question. For those people who actually don't know where you are from, you were born in Seychelles, right?
I was born in Seychelles, yes, which is a tiny little island off the east coast of Africa. I say off the east coast, it's literally in the middle of the Indian Ocean. What can I tell you about Seychelles?
I love it.
The Prince.
I can't wait to go back. No, my question is actually, how has that played a role in, you know, in achieving what you have today, and then in helping you shape who you are as a person?
Oh, absolutely. My family, we left Seychelles when I was 7, and the whole idea of the whole move was so I could have a better education, come to London and have a better education. Because I think when you're from a Commonwealth country, there is this idea of England or London being the motherland as such. It's a very strange thing. Even though a lot of people have never been, who may be from Seychelles, have never been to England or London, there is this idea of, because the Queen is our head of state and things like that, and British laws, a lot of people speak English. You know, the capital is called Victoria after Queen Victoria. So the idea of coming to the UK and coming to London and having an education here is the be-all and end-all. I mean, that is the reason we moved here, if I have better education. So having an education and having that foundation of, I always say I was born under the Commonwealth sun as such. So for me, England feels like home, you know, and that's definitely played a part in you know, my education, my career, the things that I've done to where I am now. It's because we're in a country like London or England where we have the ability to do those things, especially when you see so much conflict and disarray around the world right now. You think I'm actually quite lucky in terms of where I am and what I'm doing.
Right. Okay. Wow. That make me want to go on holiday in Seychelles.
Book a holiday to Seychelles.
Yes, I'd love to go when the lockdown is over.
Exactly.
I spent a honeymoon there, so it's wonderful memories.
Oh, you had your honeymoon there?
Yeah, I had my honeymoon.
Oh, right. Yeah, my was obviously the Prince William had his honeymoon there as well and things like that. So.
There we go.
Good taste. Good taste.
Exactly. Right, Christian, it's so nice to have you, and thank you for spending the time with us. So, you know, when our new pop-up is open, we'd love to see you and welcome your beautiful work in our space.
Absolutely.
So, keep creating, and we'd love to see more art. And then for those who tuned in, and then the people who would watch this IGTV later on, they can head over to Curated Crowd, and there's a dedicated page about Christian, and also there's a blog about you. They can learn more about the stories. And
exactly.
Hope to see
and if anybody And if anybody has any questions that I didn't answer or want to know more, they can just drop me a message and I'll happily answer them and, you know, and speak to anybody. So.
Yes, perfect. Great. Good
All
to
right.
see you, and have a good afternoon and a good weekend.
And you have a great weekend. Take care, everybody.
Bye. You too.
Bye. Bye.